All right, the YouTube link is out there. So we will begin. Welcome to everyone. We are picking up where we left off. We are at Joshua 22. And just a reminder, we kind of jumped over a lot of stuff, and it's not really jumping over it. There was a lot of detail given that was geography of the different lands, the regions that the tribes received, and to go through that in this format really isn't optimal. So we pick the important things that are more suitable for study and went over those. So we went from chapter 14 to the end of chapter 21, and here we're picking up with chapter 22, which we will go through in its entirety because it is important stuff in here. So remember, there were in the promised land, and let me bring this up, bring this over here, this map. There were those areas. This is the territory that they had conquered. There was still stuff to be conquered. Philistia, all of this stuff was to be conquered. That was the plan. Um, but this is the Jordan River right down here, running from the Sea of Galilee down to the Dead Sea. Okay, and this stuff over here is where the eastern tribes were: Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh. That they had asked for that back when Moses was still around, and the men of fighting age had come over and helped them conquer the rest of the land, because this stuff over here was conquered before the conquest. That was Sihon, king of Og, all that stuff that happened back in Numbers that we have referred to. So now that it's pretty much mission accomplished for what was supposed to be accomplished at this time. And one more note, there were areas where some of the tribes received land, and they were supposed to expand that out farther. Their boundaries were supposed to be pushed back. That was part of the plan. So that's why that map doesn't match up exactly with the way the promised land ends up looking. Okay. At that time, chapter 22, at that time, Joshua summoned the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half tribe of Manasseh and said to them, "You have kept all that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, and have obeyed my voice in all that I have commanded you. You have not forsaken your brothers in these many days down to this day, but have been careful to keep the charge of the Lord your God. And now the Lord your God has given you rest from your brothers as he promised them. Therefore, turn, go to your tents in the land where your possession lies, which Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you on the other side of the Jordan. Only be very careful to observe the commandment and the law that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, to love the Lord your God and to walk in all his ways and to keep his commandments and to cling to him and serve him with all your heart and with all your soul." So Joshua blessed them and sent them away, and they went to their tents. Okay. So what Joshua does here, because this is kind of farewell, they're going over to the other side of the Jordan, and we just had some family leave. They're driving 6 hours away. If you had to travel that far before the days of automobiles, you weren't getting together for reunions. That wasn't going to happen. But in this section, Joshua is charging them basically: be faithful. Don't forget all this stuff that Moses commanded you. the Lord your God through Moses commanded you. And the one part of this section here really is the way he words this, the way he talks about this. It is very reminiscent of how he talked to them in Deuteronomy. And remember, the first 5 books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy is Moses' farewell, it is his instruction to them. And the wording that Joshua uses here is very reminiscent of that. He's putting them in mind of all the things that Moses charged them, that he told them, that the exhortation that he gave. And when you read that stuff, when you hear this here, it's like, seriously? We could hear it this way. What do you think they're going to do? Do you think they're just going to go off and forget everything God told them and begin to worship other gods and do horrible, awful things? And the answer is, well, yeah. With the perspective of history, yeah. There's a reason that parents, when their kids go off to college, what do? What do they say? Behave. Run around with the right people. It's really easy to get sucked into behaviors that are just a sinful downward spiral. And you have the same thing here. And what we see is that in time, they do fall away. They do fall away. The rest of the history of the nation of Israel, and then the two kingdoms, Judah and Israel, shows us that they fall away again and again. Temptation is real. There were still people around in the surrounding areas who worshiped false gods. And Israel got drawn away and tempted into that again and again and again. And I'm harping on this for a reason. The Apostle Paul tells us, and I'm trying to think of the reference if somebody wants to punch it in and find it. Let him who thinks he stands take heed lest he fall. Falling is easy. Standing upright in the face of adversity, in the midst of the storm, as the tides of sin and wickedness try to sweep you away, it's easier just to give in. And that is the picture. There is a constant bombardment of temptation. And here's the bad thing that makes it all worse. I like sin. I do. It's appealing. My sinful nature says, ooh, that'd be fun. That's even the way we think about it. Ooh, that'd be fun. I can't do that, but that'd be fun. And it's fun for a little while. The passing pleasures of sin. What it leads to is not fun at all. Otherwise, no one would do it. If you just had to deal with the final consequence, no one would jump in and do that. And don't forget that all of these nations around, all of these people who were tempting them, who would tempt them, who did successfully tempt them into falling away, their worship very often was basically debauchery. That's how they worshiped. When all of the documentaries on the internet, would say on TV, but on the internet, talk about the ancient people in such and such a place and this place. I don't care who it is. The Sumerians, Babylonians, the Aztec, the Inca, Hindu, whatever. It's a bunch of perversion. It is a bunch of sex and drugs. So it's tempting, and they end up falling again and again. And what is the main thing he tells them? Only be very careful to observe the commandment of the law that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, to love the Lord your God and to walk in all his ways and keep his commandments and cling to him and serve him with all your heart and with all your soul. That should sound very familiar. Deuteronomy 6:4-6. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. This is the 10 Commandments. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. Sound familiar? Matthew 22:37. Jesus said, someone asked him, Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? And Jesus said to him, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. And the second is like it, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. John 14:15. If you love me, you will keep my commandments. Why are we faithful to God? Why do we eschew all of the temptation and the sin and the flood of wickedness in which we could just jump in and let the current carry us away? Because we love him. We love him, and it's about being faithful and true to him. John 14:21. I didn't want you to open up there. Stop that. Whoever has my commandments and keeps them, he it is who loves me. And he who loves me will be loved by my Father, and I will love him and manifest myself to him. Right? How do you know someone loves you? How do you know? Is it by what they say or by what they do? Right? It's by what they do. It's the actions, and that's what this is talking about here. First John, keeps opening up in the wrong place, frustrating me. First John 5:2. By this we know that we love the children of God when we love God and obey his commandments. We definitely have a theme here, don't we? For this is the love of God, that we keep his commandments, and his commandments are not burdensome. Sometimes we act as though being faithful to God is a burden. Do not know why it keeps doing what it's doing. Popping open in the wrong place. Okay, I'll make it do it here. Technology is really wonderful until it's frustrating on a Sunday morning, I tell you. So faithful, be faithful. God doesn't expect perfection. Your spouse, your significant other, they don't expect perfection because we can't deliver that. What is expected, what is desired, and that is faithfulness, faithful love. That is what the covenant is about. No Jew really believed, no faithful Jew really believed they could keep the covenant perfectly. They could endeavor to be faithful. And that's what we do with our Lord. And that's how we show our love to him. So, with all of that understanding, Joshua sent them away and they went to their tents. Now, to the one half of the tribe of Manasseh, Moses had given a possession in Bashan, or Bashan, depending on how you want to pronounce it. But to the other half, Joshua had given a possession beside their brothers in the land west of the Jordan. So, with the 12 tribes, and remember, if you're on the ball enough to remember the 12 sons of Israel, of Jacob, Manasseh wasn't one of them. Neither was Ephraim. You had Reuben, you had Gad, you had Dan, you had Asher, Naphtali, Judah, Benjamin, Joseph. Joseph received a double portion from Jacob, his father. And so his sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, both got an inheritance in the promised land. And it's Manasseh here that is being talked about. Theirs was split in half. Part of the tribe of Manasseh was over in the southern part of the promised land on the other side of the Jordan. The first half of the tribe of Manasseh was on the other side of the Jordan, the east side of the Jordan, and it was in Bashan. Whenever we see Bashan, we want to take note. We can find it on the map that's already on this screen. See, there's Bashan up here. And again, how these regions were conceptualized in the minds of people varied. Let me ask you, where is the South in the United States? Where is the South? Depends on where you grew up, right? If you're a Yankee and you grew up north, then the South starts with Kentucky. If you grew up way up north, I grew up in Indiana. I went to school in Chicago and then in Wisconsin and Minnesota, for college and grad school. People up there thought I was from the South because I was from Indiana. I thought that was the weirdest daggone thing. Indiana in the South. Indiana's the Midwest. It's the heart of the Midwest, to my way of thinking. The South starts with Kentucky and Tennessee. If you live in Alabama and Georgia, you kind of think of, in Louisiana, whatever, Mississippi, you kind of think of as Kentucky as well as kind of the South. It isn't really the South. We're the real South. Well, these are regions, right? So it's how you envision them. Because where the tribe of here on this map, it says Bashan up here, and up here is Mount Hermon. Remember, we talked about all this stuff. This was kind of evil central up here. Manasseh was more down here where the little cursor is right now, is more where their allotment was. So the point being, don't get real hung up on region names. Now, nation boundaries, that's a different thing. But where a region was, there could be a lot of variation in that, just like there is for us. And when Joshua sent them away to their homes and blessed them, he said to them, go back to your tents with much wealth and with very much livestock, with silver, gold, bronze, iron, and with much clothing. Divide the spoil of your enemies with your brothers. Okay, much wealth. How did they get all that wealth? Well, they'd conquered all these people and they took all their stuff. Now, part of it was devoted to destruction. It went into the treasury of the house of God, the tabernacle, but they got to keep a lot of it. And you've got here, these were the fighting men who had come across the Jordan and fought. Well, there were a bunch of people who stayed behind. Younger guys who were too young, who are now older guys, people who weren't fit to go fight. Not everybody's fit to go fight. You can be 29 years old and not be in the health and strength and ability to go fight. So Joshua is telling them, go back and divide it up. You don't get to keep it all just because you're the ones who fought and took it. It was for everyone. Be fair in the distribution of all this stuff, this much wealth. Okay. Only fair. Because, well, you can say we're the ones who went over and fought. We're the ones who did the hard work. Well, who was taking care of things at home? Who was managing everything there? They get their share as well. Verse 9. So the people of Reuben and the people of Gad and the half tribe of Manasseh returned home, parting from the people of Israel at Shiloh, which is in the land of Canaan, to go to the land of Gilead, another region name, their own land of which they had possessed themselves by command of the Lord through Moses. One more note, I meant to say this about Bashan. I'm going to start calling it Bashan. I like Bashan more than Bashan. It's probably more accurate to the Hebrew. It is. That's the only place that's mentioned. There are a lot of regions, a lot of different geographical points that could have been made about where Reuben was and where Gad was. Bashan is mentioned for a reason. That's evil headquarters central. It gets called out. Just interesting. Okay, now we get into something weird. Not big time weird, but kind of weird. And when they came to the region of the Jordan, that is in the land of Canaan, the people of Reuben and the people of Gad and the half tribe of Manasseh built there an altar by the Jordan, an altar of imposing size. You and I would read that. And if I weren't calling it out, and if we don't go on and read more, you know what we read about that? You say, oh, that's interesting. Pay attention to the reaction to this. There is a brouhaha about this. There is a hullabaloo about this. This isn't just a minor thing. And the people of Israel heard it, meaning everybody back on the other side of the Jordan, the 9.5 tribes, or 10, 9.5, whatever it is. Yeah, 9.5 tribes. And the people of Israel heard it and said, behold, the people of Reuben and the people of Gad and the half tribe of Manasseh have built the altar at the frontier of the land of Canaan in the region about the Jordan on the side that belongs to the people of Israel. And when the people of Israel heard it, the whole assembly of the people of Israel gathered together at Shiloh to make war against them. What? Now, you can tell me if you want, those of you who are listening live to this broadcast, does that strike you as a little bit odd? They built an altar. Everybody else is ready to come over and wipe them out, to wage war against them. This is interesting on a number of levels. We'll keep going. Well, here's the big thing. We'll get to it in the text, but here's the big thing. Where was worship supposed to take place? In the tabernacle. The law was in place. All of that, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, the code of the law, how worship was supposed to take place. And it wasn't guidelines. These were laws. This is how it is to be done. There is a priesthood. There are procedures. Things are supposed to be done in an exact manner in one place. And that's the tabernacle. Now they're over on the other side of the Jordan, and the first thing they do after Joshua's admonition, reminding them of the admonition of Moses, they go over on the other side and they build an altar. You know, that's like mom and dad send their kid off to school, and they send their son off to a Bible college so they don't have to worry so much about them falling into sinful, wicked ways. And then the first news they get, and they send them away with a little bit of a treasury and money to pay for everything. The first thing they find out is that little Joey went off to school and started a frat house, the Delta House from Animal House. What are mom and dad going to do? They're going to cut off the bank account and shut this thing down, right? They're not going to be pleased. They built an altar, worship, unauthorized worship. And this wasn't a minor thing. There was a reason that God said you worship only at the tabernacle, and later as that is transferred into the temple. You only worship here. Why? To make sure it's done the way it's supposed to do, to make sure all these different perversions don't enter in. And if you read through the balance of the Old Testament going forward, what do you hear all the time? They were building altars here and up at the high places. And Solomon built altars because he was dumb enough, the wisest man in the world, nothing else to call it, was dumb enough to marry and take as concubines all these people from all these different religions, and they led the wisest man in the world into false belief up at the high places where he built altars for them so they could worship their gods. If you don't have the worship central and under the management of God's system, his people, his priests, it's going to get perverted. It's going to turn into a train wreck. And the other tribe, the 9.5 tribes on the west side of the Jordan, heard this, and they heard perversion of the covenant, rebellion against God. And we'll talk about some examples of that from the past as we move forward, as we see this dealt with. Verse 13. Then the people of Israel sent to the people of Reuben and the people of Gad and the half tribe of Manasseh in the land of Gilead, Phinehas, the son of Eleazar the priest, and with him 10 chiefs, one from each of the tribal families of Israel, every one of them a head of a family among the clans of Israel. They sent a council. They sent a delegation, a war council, delegation. And it was led by Phinehas. We'll talk about that more in a minute. And they came to the people of Reuben and the people of Gad and the half tribe of Manasseh in the land of Gilead. And they said to them, thus says the whole congregation of the Lord, what is this breach of faith that you have committed against the God of Israel and turning away this day from following the Lord by building yourselves an altar this day in rebellion against the Lord? And trust me, when the leaders of Gad and Reuben and the half tribe of Manasseh heard this, it burned their ears. This isn't just, hey, what are you guys doing? You're really screwing up over here. These were charges of infidelity, of false worship, that these were loaded terms that are used here. Have we not had enough of the sin at Peor, from which even yet we have not cleansed ourselves, and for which there came a plague upon the congregation of the Lord, that you too must turn away this day from following the Lord? And if you too rebel against the Lord today, then tomorrow he will be angry with the whole congregation of Israel. But now, if the land of your possession is unclean, pass over into the land where the Lord's tabernacle stands, about the tabernacle, and take for yourselves a possession among us. In other words, if you're already corrupted and falling into perversion because you're on this side of the Jordan away from the main body of Israel, then come back over. We'll make room for you, they're saying. This, to us, it seems over the top. It's number of reasons for that. Number one, in our modern day, one of the struggles we have, it is a shortcoming on our part because of the effect of this level of sin of the world in which we live. We don't take sin seriously enough. We don't see it as the deadly, pervasive toxin, the infection, the leaven that once it gets in, it starts spreading through everything. In many ways, this is a very good thing. It shows where the hearts of these people were. They were not going to have a falling away take place. And if there was, then they would take action to correct it themselves. They weren't going to wait for the Lord to make it obvious that he was upset about this. Now, and then what does it go on to say? Only do not rebel against the Lord or make us as rebels by building for yourselves an altar other than the altar of the Lord our God. And then they refer to the sin of Achan. Remember, he took the devoted things. Did not Achan, the son of Zerah, break faith in the matter of the devoted things? And wrath fell upon all the congregation of Israel, and he did not perish alone for his iniquity. They understood that if there was a falling away in one part, they would all pay the price for that. That's where part of this is coming from. A big part of it is coming from. But big picture, this was a very good thing that they reacted to this the way they did, because it showed that they were truly devoted to being faithful. At this point in history, they're in a pretty good place. Now, let's talk about Phinehas. Phinehas is front and center here. Eleazar is all but, it's Eleazar is still the priest, but Eleazar is really old guy by this point in time. Okay. So Phinehas, who's going to end up being the high priest, Phinehas is the one taking action here. Who's Phinehas? Phinehas is he's got a track record with this as being a man of action. And we're going to go take a look. There are things as we finished up Exodus, we hit a few things in different places in Numbers and Deuteronomy, and then mostly Numbers, and then came to the book of Joshua. One of the things we didn't cover was Numbers 25. While Israel lived in Shittim, the people began to whore with the daughters of Moab. Okay, now on a map, this is when they had come up here. They were in here. See Moab? There's Edom down there. This is right before they went up and took on Sihon, Avog, etc. Okay, that's where this was. It's while Moses was still there, and it's not long before Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh asked for the land that they just went to. They began, the people, this is widespread, began to whore with the daughters of Moab. These invited the people to the sacrifices of their gods, and the people ate and bowed down to their gods. So Israel yoked himself to Baal of Peor, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel. Okay, Baal. Baal is the big overarching deity in this region. So just as Ra was in Egypt, Baal is the top deity here in Canaan. Okay. He was worshipped slightly differently in different regions, these different areas here. So this is why he's referred to as Baal of Peor. Moab, not a good track record with Moab. Moab is the nation that descended from when Abraham and Lot parted ways, and Lot went to Sodom and Gomorrah, right? And then Sodom and Gomorrah got wiped out, and he was out there with his two daughters. And what did they do? They were afraid they were going to be wiped out from the land, and so they got dad drunk and slept with him and got pregnant. And the one she named her son Moab, which literally means from daddy. Okay. So you've got a nation that's pretty well founded in perversion. That's just one of those stories that everybody hears and does what? You go, ugh, right? It's just a visceral reaction to that. The worship of how these gods were worshipped, it's interesting. A lot of scholars, the learned, they like to play down the level of perversion that went on with the worship of these different gods, and say that the scriptures just use these terminologies of infidelity and whoring and all of that as ways of picturing the unfaithfulness to Yahweh. There is a component of that, but make no mistake about it, the way these gods were worshiped was disgusting. Sexual perversion, and then also sacrifice of children, sacrifice, period. The horrible, awful stuff that we hear about today is going on in the shadows. There's nothing new under the sun when it comes to Satan and the way he operates. So that is what was going on here. There was sexual perversion, who knows what all, but it gets cut fairly short. And the Lord said to Moses, take all the chiefs of the people and hang them in the sun before the Lord, that the fierce anger of the Lord may turn away from Israel. And Moses said to the judges of Israel, each of you kill those of his men who have yoked themselves to Baal of Peor. And yoked, that means they've gone over to it. Yoked is, you picture the thing that goes on oxen. They've connected themselves with that in not just proximity, but a yoke serves a purpose. What do? You're pulling in the same direction, right? Their purpose and intention of their existence had changed. And behold, one of the people of Israel. So this is going on. Moses just said, kill the chief men who are responsible for this stuff, hang them in the sun, God had said. And as that's going on, and behold, one of the people of Israel came and brought a Midianite woman to his family in the sight of Moses, in the sight of the whole congregation of the people of Israel, while they were weeping in the entrance of the tent of meeting. So the leaders were there and they were weeping over this sin. And this guy walks in with a bimbo from Moab and takes her into his tent, right there with his whole family. It is amazing how quickly debauchery spreads and how fast it takes hold and how rapidly people fall. But you see it here. When Phinehas, told you he was important in dealing with this kind of stuff. When Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, son of Aaron the priest, he's Aaron's grandson, saw it, he rose and left the congregation and took a spear in his hand and went after the man of Israel into the chamber. Chamber is a fancy word for bedroom, and pierced them both, the man of Israel and the woman, through her belly. Thus the plague on the people of Israel was stopped. So they were in there having sex, and Phinehas took a spear and ran them through. And the language, I won't get into it, of the terms that are used made it very clear. That's what was going on. There's some play on words here as well. That's what was going on, and he ran them through. Nevertheless, those who died by the plague were 24,000. So what had they said back in Joshua 22 about the plague and what had happened and how many had fallen? So Phinehas obviously was a guy, and then I didn't go into it back in Numbers. The Lord rewarded him and said, good job, you took action, your family will have a high position in the priesthood in perpetuity because of this. Why? Because he had zeal for God. And it seems harsh to us. He went and ran a spear through him. Well, hey, guess what? To what degree has perversion taken hold if right next to the tent of meeting, right in front of everyone who's weeping over this sin, you walk in with probably what was the equivalent of a temple prostitute and take her into your tent right in front of your own family? Yeah, that's going to call for some strict judgment by God. And that's exactly what happened. So Phinehas, the priest, as is right in a situation like this, the spiritual leaders should stand up. The spiritual leaders should say, this is sin and it has to be dealt with, and I'm going to deal with it. The Lord condemns in the book of Jeremiah the prophets who are supposed to stand on the wall and call out warning. Those who don't do that, right? You have an obligation when you are in a position of leadership, spiritual leadership. You have an obligation to deal with sin when it arises, and that is, and understand, I'm not saying that that a spiritual leader in this modern day should go run someone through with a spear. We don't have the same political structure where there was not a line of demarcation between the church and the state, and even the church isn't even all on one page. That's not what I'm saying, but sin needs to be treated as sin and called out as sin. Okay, I got to find my place back here in Joshua. Yeah, so we talked about Achan. That example is given as well. Then the people of Reuben, the people of Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh said in answer to the heads of the families of Israel, the mighty one, God the Lord, the mighty one, God the Lord, he knows. And let Israel itself know. If it is in rebellion or in breach of faith against the Lord, do not spare us today for building an altar to turn away from following the Lord. Or if we did so to offer burnt offerings or grain offerings or peace offerings on it, may the Lord himself take vengeance. In other words, he's saying, let God send down fire and take us. That's not what we're doing. And the way they start off, the mighty one, the God of Israel, the mighty one, the God of Israel, they're saying, we're faithful. We're with him. We're on the same page. You're taking this the wrong way. No, but we did it from fear that they're explaining why they built the altar. No, but we did it in fear, from fear that in time to come, your children might say to our children, what have you to do with the Lord, the God of Israel? For the Lord has made the Jordan a boundary between us and you, you people of Reuben and the people of Gad. You have no portion in the Lord. So your children might make our children cease to worship the Lord. Therefore we said, let us now build an altar, not for burnt offering, nor for sacrifice, but to be a witness between us and you and between our generation after us, that we do perform the service of the Lord in his presence with our burnt offerings and sacrifices and peace offerings. So your children will not say to our children, in time to come, you have no portion in the Lord. What they did was perfectly innocent. And the text doesn't say this. I'm going to say this. Where did they go wrong? Where did they go wrong? If you put this in the corporate world, where you're in a big company, you go and do something, what's a good idea? Put out a memo, send an email, let everybody know, hey, you'll see that we're doing this thing over here. This is why. Don't think that it's to undo that other thing that the other team is working on. This is what this is about. A little bit of communication would have been good. A little bit of communication would have gone a long way to avert this whole thing. And we thought, if this should be said to us or to our descendants in time to come, we should say, behold, the copy of the altar of the Lord, which our fathers made, not for burnt offerings nor for sacrifice, but to be a witness between us and you. Far be it from us that we should rebel against the Lord and turn away this day from following the Lord by building an altar for burnt offering, grain offering, or sacrifice, other than the altar the Lord of the Lord our God that stands before his tabernacle. So they explain it all. It's perfectly innocent. The problem was lack of communication. And, you think about it, it would have been a good thing to clear it with them. Hey, is this okay with you guys if we do this? This is what it's for. This is the purpose. When Phinehas, the priest, and the chiefs of the congregation, the heads of the families of Israel, who were with him, heard the words of the people of Reuben and the people of Gad and the people of Manasseh that they spoke, it was good in their eyes. And Phinehas, son of Eleazar the priest, said to the people of Reuben, the people of Gad, and the people of Manasseh, today we know that the Lord is in our midst, because you have not committed this breach of faith against the Lord. Now you have delivered the people of Israel from the hand of the Lord. In other words, there isn't a big problem here. Then Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the priest, and the chiefs returned from the people of Reuben and the people of Gad and the land of Gilead to the land of Canaan, to the people of Israel, and brought back word to them. And the report was good in the eyes of the people of Israel. And the people of Israel blessed God and spoke no more of making war against them to destroy the land where the people of Reuben and the people of Gad were settled. The people of Reuben and the people of Gad called the altar witness, for they said, it is a witness between us that the Lord is God. Okay. So we're going to stop there because we're almost out of time, and we definitely don't have time to jump into what comes next, which is Joshua's charge to Israel's leaders. But there is some very valuable stuff there that we learn, the faithfulness, the desire to be faithful of this generation. When we get to the end of the book of Joshua and it's talking about this generation, it's going to talk about this generation was all faithful. And that is a clear line of delineation between those who came in and settled the promised land, who conquered the promised land. But by the time it's settled and conquered, a lot of them are what? Old. And then you've got the young ones. And then we go right into the book of Judges, which is full of all kinds of Israel issues with them falling away. And it only gets worse as time goes on. Okay, so we're going to stop there. I want to thank you for joining us. If you like this, please give us a thumbs up. Encourage you to subscribe. And if you subscribe, make sure and hit the notification bell. And that way you're notified when we put out new content. We put out new content every day, every weekday, Monday through Friday. And finally, encourage you to share this video with others. Thank you. God bless, and have a great day.